Microplastics in the Ocean by Kellen, Landon Geyer, Landon Jurek, and Bo Wallace. The problem. Microplastics in the oceans have affected marine organisms through their toxic effects. This review examines how microplastics form in the ocean environment, primarily through the weathering of plastic on beaches, which breaks down the material into microparticles carried into the water by wind and waves. Unlike natural particles, microplastics attract persistent organic pollutants due to their surface properties at much higher rates. Marine organisms may ingest these pollutants along with microplastics, but the full extent of their transfer across different levels of the food web and the consequent ecosystem damage remain uncertain. Given the escalating ocean plastic pollution, it is crucial to further investigate microplastics' impact on marine ecosystems. Why are microplastics harmful? Microplastics are harmful through their digestion. Microplastics, found all over the place in marine environments, consist of various polymers and additives capable of absorbing substances like nutrients and pollutants from their surroundings. Their small size enables a wide variety of marine organisms to consume them, which poses significant risks. Beyond direct harm, microplastics also concentrate environmental contaminants, transfer them through food chains, and potentially impacting ecological processes. Recognized as emerging pollutants, microplastics pose a substantial threat to marine biodiversity globally. This summary outlines the effects of microplastics and plastics on marine organisms and ecosystems. As you can see from this graph, it shows that the increase in plastic production is correlated to the amount of microplastics and plastics in the ocean.
Now we're going to be going over the first solution that our group came to, which is that in order to reduce the amount of microplastics found in the ocean, we first need to reduce the amount of plastics produced and consume less plastic products. This means that we need to be more aware of what we are consuming, as the more that we consume, the more that the big companies and corporations will produce. This is known as supply and demand. This includes reducing, reusing, recycling, using compostable items like paper straws, plates, and bowls, and just being more aware of what we are consuming, and even better, spreading awareness to people that we know. To back this up, here is a quote from W. Shim, researcher at Seoul National University of Science and Technology, who states that lowering the amount of microplastics in the ocean can be achieved by reducing the amount of plastics produced and consuming less plastic products. This means that before we think of any fancy or technological ways of clearing up the oceans, we first need to produce less plastic products and consume less. Now we're going to be going over the limitations and implications of this solution. One big limitation is that we all already have big habits and bad habits of wasting ingrained in us that we may not even notice. And also, many of us have to learn how to be more aware of what we are consuming and what harm it's doing to the environment. Some of these bad habits include purchasing and using too many plastic products, wasting plastic products by throwing them away with close to no use, and using products like plastic bottles, straws, and cling wrap that we use in bulk, and we may not even notice how much we're using and how much damage they're doing to the environment. To back this up and just give you a better all-around idea of our solution, here's a quote from the Director of Global One Health and Professor of Molecular Epidemiology, S. Thacker, who states that people waste plastic due to its superior properties and lack of manageability, leading to an increased volume in the natural world and a global issue.
Now, solution 2. Microplastics in the ocean have effects that can be reversed with multiple filtration systems and absorption solutions. First, filtration. Now, what is filtration? Filtration is the act of using a fine film in a plant or some sort of factory along the coast, and it filters out salt or microplastics or sand. This has actually been done multiple times before with sand filtration and desalination. Desalination is the act of taking salt out of the ocean and using it for usable, drinkable water for households. Absorption is the same concept, where generally a material will absorb all microplastics in a given amount of water and put the water back where it belongs. Scientists have created an absorption sponge that actually absorbs 90% of microplastics in a given amount of water. This sponge is made of starch and gelatin and has been used on a unit of water about the size of a large pool. Now, according to Javier Bayo in the Department of Chemical and Environmental Engineering, Rapid sand filtration systems effectively reduce microplastics in urban wastewater treatment plants with higher removal efficiency for particulate forms. Now he's saying that sand filtration is actually more effective than a desalination plant would be for removing microplastics. Now, what are some limitations and implications for filtration and absorption systems? There are pros and cons to both filtration and absorption. Absorption takes in 90% of microplastics, which is absolutely huge compared to what we're doing now. Filtration will also be effective in a long-term solution as they would stay running for years on end. They would also require dozens of plants along the coast, which would be very effective for a given ocean. However, there are a few concerns with filtration and absorption. As I said before, a filtration system would require about a dozen plants along each coast, and that is very expensive. About one filtration plant can cost up to $32 billion to keep running throughout a year and to have it built. Also, it would require a disposal system for microplastics that have been taken out of the ocean. Also, both methods are purely preliminary, and filtration hasn't been done with microplastics before, and absorption has only been done on about the scale of a large pool, as I said before. It hasn't been done on an ocean-wide scale before. To give you a better insight on this, the U.S. Government Survey School of Water Science says the primary reason we don't see more filtration plants is due to the cost to operate these plants. Energy consumption hikes up the cost to run a plant. As I said before, the plant is already about $32 billion to build and keep running, but not only this, but it would need a disposal system to get rid of microplastics that it has extracted.
So now we are brought to the better solution. We found that solution 1, which is the reduction and elimination of plastics, is more viable. According to the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which specializes in environmental affairs, states, plastic is choking our oceans. Sir David Attenborough told us during Blue Planet 2 that we dump 8 million tons of plastics into the sea every year. It's killing and harming marine life. With the reduction of plastics from the source, the damage will go no further. Here is displayed the amount of plastics produced in rounded billions of pounds by the U.S. A near 105 billion pounds of plastic were produced in 2022 by the United States, most of which ends up in the ocean and turns into microplastics that harm marine organisms. Through the reduction and elimination of plastic production, these numbers displayed will be brought down drastically. It starts with us. So what can we do? According to the Australian government's Department of Climate Change, the simplest way to reduce plastic waste is to avoid unnecessary and single-use plastics, support businesses who are reducing plastic waste, and reuse existing plastics. Thank you. He is our leader.
Nice job, guys. So I got a few questions for you. Okay, Kellen, you'll go first. Reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one of these guys do you think had the biggest impact on your understanding of the problem?
I think the biggest impact was Bo's environmental lens, is because it taught me to realize how much of an impact microplastics have and how much have been produced and the effects on the marine organisms and ecosystems.
Terrific, thanks. Second, Bo, how did the group decide to include Kellen's perspective in the overall presentation? Which part of the presentation came from Kellen?
We included Kellen's lens, which is economic, in the presentation when we talked about how much it would cost to do the desalination plants, as they are very expensive, and we would also have to create jobs for them. But that's the good side of it, is that it would produce a lot more jobs, and that would help the economy.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, let's see, Landon J. What's an example of a compelling argument from any of these guys' papers that you guys chose not to include, and why didn't you include it?
So the other Landon who did scientific lens, and he actually talked about the effects that it has on humans and what microplastics in the ocean are doing to us. And I think the main reason that we didn't include this was because it kind of painted humans as a victim, even though we're more of the cause for microplastics.
Excellent, interesting. Okay, and then the final Landon. You guys were a group of 4, but if you were a group of 5, like, is there room for another perspective here that might have aided you guys? And if so, what would it be?
We discussed about this, and we would say that the historical lens would actually perfect our presentation, because it could talk about the damage microplastics have done in a time in the United States and all over the globe.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.